All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
A big good morning to you. I know it. I feel it too, don't you? You feel the hope? You feel the inspiration? You feel the future? You feel the potential? I know. I feel it too. So many good things to do in the show ahead today. There's some big things going on. I'll mention this. There's a super PAC being formed to try to put together a coalition significant enough in the state of California here to take back control of Congress. Yeah.
Thank God.
I'll tell you, yeah, how about that? But in another part of California's spending, we've already run out of money that was dedicated to helping people buy homes. I'll tell you a little bit about that. Law and disorder, kind of the grim of America in the United States of guns. 2 shootings yesterday in Kentucky. You heard about one. There was actually a second one that really hasn't gotten a lot of publicity. I'll just mention that to you as well. And while we're on guns, we'll talk to a guy who sort of has a relationship with both the U.S. and Canada. And in that way, he has a perspective on both when it comes to guns. So all of that, bottom of the hour, Bill Mann will join us. And, of course, David Cay Johnston, the Pulitzer Prize winner. At 11 o'clock, I want to talk about, well, not even so much about guns. I want to really speak to David about what's happening with the courts and how the courts are essentially wresting from the FDA, which has its own problems. Let's face it, the FDA. The courts are seizing from the FDA the power to approve medications. That's really what's happening with this latest judgment from this Texas justice, right? So why do you have the FDA? Why do you go through rigorous review processes if you're going to let a judge just swing in and quote some law from the 1870s and take a drug off the market, make it unavailable? I mean, there is a reckoning to be done in this country about a lot of things, and the lopsided nature of the way things get done with the Supreme Court and then the federal court system, it's scary. So I don't want to sound seditious or, or too rebellious, but we're at a real bizarre place where these modern day jihadists, I mean, this is a judge who had an agenda. This is a judge who got onto the court wanting to overturn a woman's reproductive rights. And he did it and appears to be following through somewhat effectively. So I want to get all of that.
I have a question.
Yes, Kim McAllister, a question, please.
I have a question in the back of the room, please.
Yes, of course, please.
I don't
Kim, how are
know
you?
if this has ever happened before. And I come at this from a complete place of not being educated on it at all. But I have this question about judges and rulings, and you made me think about it. I wonder if there has ever been a moment where there's had to be a limit to the scope of what judges can and cannot rule on.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So I understand that, lawmakers make the law. I get that. So a judge can't necessarily make the law, but can rule in a way in which a law, is either upheld or not. I understand all that. But what I wonder is if there's ever been a moment where judges in general have had the scope of what they are or are not able to rule upon, like medication, like a federal agency that has a job that you can't just walk in and usurp their power. Have they ever been limited in any way on what they can rule on?
Well, I mean, my knee-jerk knowledge on this is that judges interpret the law, right? Mm-hmm. And the laws are made by legislative bodies, so that the legislative bodies aren't the courts.
Right.
But the courts interpret what those legislative bodies hand down. The change that you're suggesting or that you're implying with the question would be to the power and breadth of those court judgments, and I think it's a reasonable question. I mean, in other words, I think you're implying, sort of judicial overreach,
right,
which is really what we're talking about today with David Cay Johnston. I think it's ridiculous. Look, the same thing is happening with the Environmental Protection Agency, with the undercutting of the EPA decisions on essentially the levels of pollutants that we allow in things like water and air, right? And the Supreme Court has undercut the EPA's ability to regulate those poisons in our environment. That's something I care very deeply about alongside these other issues. But that is a government agency dedicated to doing that, regulating and keeping track of toxins that fall into our air and our water. And so it's critical that that government agency be charged with that. That government agency is populated with scientists, with those who understand how to sample soil, air, water, and to regulate these things. It's not regulated enough for me, but just saying it's there. Supreme Court is undercutting that. So now you have an FDA that is populated with what? With doctors, specialists, scientists who are trained to do what they do. Review these medications, look at peer-reviewed research, look at experimental results, and then determine whether a medication or drug is safe for the consumer market and whether it's effective for the consumer market. Now you're going to tell me that a judge in Texas is going to do that? This guy is as I've said, he's agenda-driven. It's wrong. But we can talk to David Cay Johnston more about it. I think it's the real undoing of sanity in yet another way, in this craziness of the modern era. I wanted to mention a couple of things. First of all, Tony is in the crowd today. Tony is he's our pal when Albert's not here.
Yeah, I don't know Tony, but I assume it's great.
It is great when Tony's here. And he does all the, all the stuff. Like there's any technical problem, we start bleeding out publicly. Tony always runs in. He's like a volunteer fireman.
Yeah.
When I was a college student, Tony, I was just a lad. I was a college student. I'm sitting at dinner one night, and there were four of us living in 1 year. It was my junior year of college. And I think it was my junior year. Not important. Maybe sophomore. So I'm sitting there. No, let's work out whether it was junior or sophomore first before we continue with the...
Okay. What movies were you watching? Let's timeline this.
So, really. So all of a sudden, one of the guys at the table he leaps up. He was a senior living with us, and he was kind of like the adult. And he leaps up and runs out of the unit, out of the room, and screams off in his car. We have no idea what's going on. So we're sitting there looking at each other going, what did we just see here? What's going on with this guy? He's gone for about 20 minutes. He comes back, and he sits down, and he keeps eating. I said, hey, what just happened? You got up, you ran. He said, fire alarm. I'm a volunteer fireman.
Jeez.
Wow. Yeah. That's a trained ear. I didn't even hear the alarm. So Tony sometimes is like that. Yeah. Tony hears the alarm, and he swings in. So we appreciate that.
I get a text. Thanks, Tony. I hear my text. It's like, oh no, what's going on?
What's going on now? Do you need help with this?
To do this.
Yeah. Tony anticipates the issues. So very glad to have him. Hey, there are a couple
only because I've made
all
those mistakes already.
Yeah, well, it's there were some after hours contributions that people made in the chat. When you sign on later and watch our show, you're able to make a contribution. There's a heart there as you watch on YouTube with a $sign, and if you click it, you can make a contribution. And people do, and I just wanted to acknowledge Sausalito Victoria. Oh. She said, Mark's Madness has been fun. Thanks. Vicky gave us $49.99. I mean, that's a lot of fun. Yeah. Thank you so much, Vicky, for that. Really cool. And that's one of the contributions. I also saw that another Vicky Wade on YouTube gave us $4.99. Thank you for that. And so these are all just contributions. And finally, that Lazica Concrete in the 510, they jumped on and threw us $20. So it's just cool. It's a cool way to support the show. If you see something you like or you want to support the show, it's right there on YouTube and you can do it. Yeah, there they are.
And speaking of Mark's Madness.
Yeah, Mark's Madness, the Good Day Sir mug is...
Good day, sir!
You must get it, have it, display it, use it. It's pretty terrific. I have to say that Mark's Madness had some real surprises.
Something that this country has really never witnessed.
We really hadn't witnessed one like this before. I was just trying to find the brackets as they blew up all over the place.
I have a problem. It's an ongoing issue.
Oh?
You can see
we
that
are truly in uncharted territory.
Oh, let's find out how uncharted it is.
I have this. You see, I misspelled Sausalito.
Oh, did you?
The problem is
Sausalito.
The I on my keyboard.
Oh no,
is broken.
Oh, wait a minute.
What?
Oh,
I don't have. It's why I couldn't type in Victoria or Vicky.
Oh.
Or the I in the third concrete company, because I don't have an I on my keyboard that works. So I have to constantly.
Oh my God! Wait a minute. You know what this means?
I'm trying to find words that don't have I's.
I think we all heard what Kim was talking about.
What am I going to do without my eye?
She disguises it as a complaint about her eye. But we know what the truth is.
You should see me reading a newscast.
She doesn't have the funds.
No eye.
For an eye. And so, today, as you watch our show, think about what you can spare. Maybe you can become a Patreon member. Maybe you can contribute to our PayPal. I'm not saying that your monies will first go to getting Kim her eye. We'll get Kim her eye. But will she get the valuable medication that she needs every day just to show up to this show? I don't know. There's only so much money to go around. Money for the keyboard, money for her medicines. TheMarkThompsonShow.com. Click on Patreon or PayPal. TheMarkThompsonShow.com. Wow,
oh
Kim.
God.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
California may actually be in a position to regain control of Congress using a super PAC funding effort that's already put together tens of millions of dollars. They're ready to spend $35 million in our state. Could they control Congress? It's going to depend on a lot of things, but the super PAC is one of the places they'll be getting the funds. Let me put my credibility glasses on, and I'll tell you more about it. In the 2022 midterm campaigns, I think maybe $10 million was spent in California from this PAC. Now they're ready to spend $35 million. Democrats can't retake the House without winning seats back in California, said a congressional forecaster. Democrats' strategic decisions have historically teetered between the need to win House seats in states like California and the cost of campaigning in areas with expensive media markets. In the November election, the party suffered the consequences for not spending big in California. Lost some close races here. So now, again, I think it's a sad fact, of course, and I'm sure you'd agree, most of you, that it takes so much money to win a political race and that politics in this country comes down to money in so many different ways. But despite Democrats' overwhelming voter registration advantage in California, there are several competitive congressional districts, because they are drawn by an independent commission that pays no heed to protecting office holders. Excuse me. The Republicans' main congressional super PAC invested heavily in the state to protect the party's incumbents, won an open seat in the Central Valley, nearly knocked out a Democrat. And so you had Kevin McCarthy winning the speaker's gavel, right? He's from Bakersfield. And the margin of victories was small. California is critical to the path, said a former senior Pelosi advisor. We want to lay a marker down early. They're allowed to raise unlimited sums, as you know, the PAC is, from donors for independent expenditures on individual races. And I think there are contribution limits on the national parties. But these super PACs, these House Majority PACs, allowed to raise unlimited sums of money. It may come down to dropping a ton of money in media buys here in California. There were examples they point to of funding campaigns. It's going to be difficult. There is a real fight over California, even in this state, which is overwhelmingly Democrat. It may seem odd, but it's a fact. Democrats will have a better chance in a number of California congressional districts because 2024 is a presidential election year. That means greater turnout among young people generally, minorities as well, and other voters who tend to favor Democratic candidates. We're going to have much, much higher Democratic turnout, said one political expert. Anyway, they are going to spend significantly here, so we will see. But, I mean, it comes down to a handful of seats, right? And so the Republican super PAC is expected to spend a similar amount in California. This is going to, well, you're going to see political ads every 5 seconds, you know. And you find political ads still dominating television and radio. That's legacy media. Like right now you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on a podcast. That's really contemporary media in a way that reflects general viewing trends. People are trending away from legacy media, traditional media, television, radio. Look, I love television and radio too, so I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying that there's a trend away from it. Still, the spend is overwhelmingly toward those things. Now, increasingly, there is some internet presence, and you'll find Google ads, and you'll find any number of political ads sort of in that space, but I think it's been a slow move to that platform. Anyway, stand by for a huge push from the Democrats and this super PAC. They could spend $35 million in the state of California. That would be insane. I mean, you'll just see wall-to-wall politics when you tune in to anything.
The Mark Thompson Show.
You may have seen the advertisements for free cash from the state of California to help you buy your first home. That's a real thing. That program does exist. But
what? Free cash?
Yeah, to buy a house. The bad news is they're already out of money.
What?
Yeah. The California Housing Finance Agency launched the California Dream for All Shared Appreciation Loan Program. They could have maybe come down with a better name, a little shorter, but all right. California Dream for All Shared Appreciation Loan Program. I guess if you know you're going to run out of money real quickly, you don't need to come up where they sweat the name too much. They offered qualified first-time buyers up to 20% of the purchase price of a house or condominium. The help was available only to households whose earnings were below a certain income limit, right? That's $180,000, by the way. That was in LA County. In Orange County, it was $235,000. State lawmakers had set aside $500 million for the program. But because of the fiscal shortfall, right, the program essentially was only allocated $300 million, was going to help 2,300 home buyers. Well, on Friday, they announced, we've helped everybody we can. If you're not already in the pipeline, you're out of luck.
Good day, sir.
Well, at least for now. More funds are going to be available in the program at some point, they're saying. But they cannot predict what point that will be. So, sorry, first-time home buyers. Yeah, a bit of a miscalculation is exactly right. So, I mean, it was a good thought, but it just kind of went away quickly. So, yeah, a little bit disappointing.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I got a note, Kim, and it was a little bit hurtful, to be honest.
Oh.
Do you want the... Let me see if I can find it, the hurtful note.
I'd like the hurtful note.
Would you? The essence of it is that...
It's always good to have a little bit of comeuppance, you know?
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it keeps me humble.
Right.
Hard to believe I could be more humble than I am. Still immensely humble. What essentially they said was, Mark, and I think it's shown up here in the chat maybe as well. Mark, that jacket has seen better days.
Everybody
Get a new
has
one.
an opinion. Mm-hmm.
First, I would say, how dare you? Secondly, I would say, this look of this jacket hasn't changed in years. This is the look. But let me be fair to your comment. My favorite jacket, so I was wearing it a lot, and I started to worry that I'm going to wear it out. And so I actually, this is a couple of years ago, went to one of those, custom places where you can get suits made and all the rest. You know, Kim, you have your stuff all custom made. And I said, I need a jacket, and I need it exactly like this one. Just knock off this one. So they measured, blah, 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 blah. So I got the jacket, and it's awful. I hate it. And the reason for that is because it doesn't have the distressed look. Oh. It's the fabric. It looks too new. Mm-hmm. I didn't want a new-looking jacket. And I made it clear. I said, I like this fabric, this. So
yeah, but that's the patina of a well-worn jacket. It can't be recreated.
You're right.
Yeah.
But patina's a ding word. Yep, that's absolutely right. I think on some level you're exactly right. I have some Law and Disorder. I was going to add to Law and Disorder the gun situation in Kentucky. Now I'm putting aside the gun situation in Kentucky until Bill Mann joins at the bottom of the hour. So these are the tough decisions that have to be made. Should we do like a mini Law and Disorder now? And then I can but it's going to be minus the gun stuff. Are we good with that?
I think that's good.
Yeah.
A lot of questions about the jacket.
Okay.
We got time.
What did you say about the jacket?
Questions about the jacket. First of all, I want to know what your response was. I look at the jacket as like a Mr. Rogers situation. Oh. You come in, you keep the jacket in the studio every day, you put it on, and before you leave the studio, you take it off. It's just kind of like a show jacket, right?
Oh, I see.
But apparently, Square says his wife is always asking why you don't wear the Mark Thompson Show shirt.
Yeah, you're right. I should. I guess I try to display the Mark Thompson stuff behind me. Like even the mug, I should drink out of it, but instead I thought I'd keep it there so people could see it. But you're right. I should just, because if I have the mug, it'll sit down here. No one will be able to see it. So similarly with the shirt, though, I should wear the shirt. You're right. I take that note. Maybe I will start wearing the shirt. Yeah, you're right. Maybe I'll start wearing the merch. Good. Yeah. The jacket I feel comfortable in. It is my favorite jacket. And so there is a quality of what Kim's talking about, which is I sort of keep it on deck for the show because it's my favorite jacket. But anyway, these are good questions. Thank you. These are very good questions indeed. By the way, while I'm in the middle of a digression, I want to mention that I was on a really fun show.
Oh.
And I believe we have it, the Film Crickets, it's called. And you can see it up, there it is. The Film Crickets, they're a show, and they reached out to me. And they said, will you join us? We talk about movies from, I think, the 80s and 90s is what they said. They gave me dates, like 1980. I forget the actual dates, but their thing is 80s and 90s movies, okay? They look back at different movies. And they review and talk about the movies and what the staying power of the movie is. And you can see, does it hold up? And it was really fun. And I gave them a list of movies. Some were comedies, some were a short list, but a list that kind of had a pretty good cross-section, maybe 6 movies.
Was it a list of movies with you in it?
No.
No, it wasn't Mark Thompson movies?
That would have been a better conversation.
Right. Do you know who I am?
Yes, exactly.
I'm kind of a big deal.
Thank you. Maybe for next time. But I chose Full Metal Jacket, Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. So if you have an interest in, I think it's about an hour-long podcast talking about Full Metal Jacket, but we digress into Kubrick and all the rest. It's there, the Film Critics. They're right here on YouTube, the very best place on earth. So you can find them and watch and enjoy. There is, I'll warn you, there's some, I don't say the F word, Kim, but there is a little effing and, S-ing. Yeah, but it's not.
Be prepared.
Yeah. It's so weird when we don't have it on our show and somebody says it, it's like, oh, wait.
I know. It's that carryover from radio, when someone says like a drops an F-bomb and everyone in the whole studio, their eyes get wide and everyone kind of goes, oh, yeah, at the same time.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And that's exactly right, what Kim's saying. It's a holdover from radio. I just don't, I'm just in that place where, this is very nice. Mark, you could wear anything and look like a stud. Isn't that nice? Well, thank you very much. And, I can't, who am I to disagree? All right. Smash the like button like a boss. When we come back,
Smashed it with your iron rod.
We'll catch up on that Law and Disorder, I promise. Special guest Bill Mann, who splits life between America and Canada. So he lives in the United States of guns and the Canadian provinces without guns. I'm curious just to talk to him for a minute about how Canada views the neighbors to the south. And just how a Canadian, and he has, I think, a son living in Canada now also, just how the Canadians, so close to us in so many ways, yet culturally differ from us in this dramatic way when it comes to guns. So, again, smash the like button.
With your iron rod.
Thanks for being here, Mark Thompson.
I've told you, it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, yeah, it's the Mark Thompson Show. I'm Kim McAllister. Kentucky police say the 25-year-old gunman behind yesterday's mass shooting at a bank was an employee there. 5 people are dead, more than a half dozen injured, as the shooting at the Old National Bank in downtown Louisville is still under investigation. Police say the officers exchanged gunfire with the shooter, who was killed at the scene. The word is the man had been told he was going to be let go or fired from his job and came back with a weapon. A grand jury is hearing evidence this week in connection with the 8 Akron, Ohio police officers involved in the death of Yeilling Walker. The 25-year-old black man was shot 46 times during a traffic stop in 2022. That incident sparked riots in Akron last summer, and now businesses in downtown Akron have boarded up windows ahead of word on whether the officers should face criminal charges. State of California taking even more action to ensure women have access to abortions. Sue Dunlap is the CEO of Planned Parenthood Los Angeles. She brought local leaders together yesterday in LA for an update saying abortion is under attack. The state has secured an emergency stockpile of up to 2 million misoprostol pills, that can be used on their own to end pregnancies. This comes after a Texas judge banned another medication last Friday that works with a second drug. Governor Gavin Newsom says he won't cave to extremists trying to outlaw these critical abortion services. California, by the way, also shares the nation's negotiated terms of its misoprostol purchase to help other states secure the drug at a low cost and protect access to abortion medication.
Meaning that we pool money into those funds associated with trying to get what does that mean? That we share the? Say it again.
Is the negotiated terms. So
I see. Okay.
How we dealt with the drug companies and the government to get a hold of this medication and stockpile it. So we'll share how we did that.
Right. It speaks to pricing too, I think. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you.
The global economy in a better place than predicted, despite the ongoing war in Ukraine. While speaking from Washington, D.C., Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said energy and food prices have stabilized and supply chain pressures are easing. She says she doesn't anticipate a downturn in the U.S. economy. And French President Emmanuel Macron is sparking outrage after he suggested Europe take a separate stance from the U.S. on Taiwan. During his 3-day trip to China last week, Macron stated it would be the worst thing for Europe to adapt to the American rhythm or a Chinese overreaction. Political officials on both sides of the Atlantic criticized his statement as being too accommodating to China.
Well, but he said it in that French accent, which is so
it makes it okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It just sounded a little snotty. That's all.
But it sounds already so. The French thing doesn't. Yeah.
So did you see the Jimmy Kimmel piece with Jeremy Renner last night?
Yes, that was something. I saw a bit of the interview, like 5 minutes of it, 10 minutes of it.
Yeah. So during the interview, Renner is talking about this video that Paul Rudd sent him while he was in the hospital, recovering from being hit by a snowplow. During the recent interview on Jimmy Kimmel Live, the actor said his Marvel Cinematic Universe co-star made him a fake cameo video. So cameo is one of those things where you can pay a celebrity and they'll say, "Happy birthday, Mark." Whatever. They don't know you, but they act like they do.
Oh, yeah.
So,
we did one here. Albert did one for me.
Oh,
with
so nice.
With Jeanine Pirro. He knows I hate Jeanine Pirro. So they got Jeanine Pirro on to talk about how, Mark, I know you're a big Trump fan.
Oh, God.
And you want to see the president. It was pretty funny. So anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
So Rudd makes Renner a cameo video pretending like he's sending a well wish to a fan. But in the video, Rudd asks if Renner got in a fight with a snowblower. He said, "Next time, maybe you just let the snow melt." Renner had broken more than 30 bones, at least 35 bones, he said, in his body, and suffered blunt chest trauma in that incident. His attitude is amazing. He was so
pretty positive.
Upbeat. Yeah.
Right. I thought he was a goner, and I guess he did too. It was pretty miraculous that he was sitting there on that set last night on a talk show talking to Kimmel.
You know what's and I think everyone in the audience and at home watching thought, we're really lucky to be seeing him right now. But a lot of people, when they get in that chair, they're stiff and uncomfortable. And it's like, it takes them a minute to calm down. He just plopped in the chair. He had the most natural body language. Like, he just didn't have time for all the pretense. It was a good interview.
Yeah, I liked it too.
The Mark Thompson Show is crowdfunded. Thank you for being a part of the MTS community, participating in the chat, spending your time with us today. If you would like to support the show, please consider being a Patreon member or supporting us via PayPal. You can find those links and much more at themarkthompsonshow.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
My wife wants some vegetables for crudité.
I was a basketball referee.
Feels great, baby.
Use Mark Thompson. It's unbelievably offensive.
What he's got going here is a situation.
I was fortunate. Everyone I worked with made me better at my job.
You are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
What up, everybody? It is our Big Tuesday show. Coming up in the 11 o'clock hour, the Pulitzer Prize winner, David Cay Johnston. I want to talk to him about these judicial rulings and how justices, federal judges across this country, and the Supreme Court as well, are wrestling from major government organizations charged with regulation, the power to regulate. And the most recent case is these drugs that involve the reproductive rights and the difficult choices that women make with their own body. So we'll get to that in the 11 o'clock hour. This is kind of a treat. This guy wrote about media in the Bay Area, lived in the Bay Area for years, radio, television, and moved away, still does a lot of writing and writes on media as well. And his basic musings show up in his columns that are now more occasional as he has moved to a quieter life. But he's an interesting guy to talk to, I think, in view of the problem we clearly have with guns in this country, because he both lives in this country and has a foot in Canada as well. I'll ask him to explain that. But I was talking to him the other day, and he was sort of talking about the way Canadians treat guns, and then coming into this country, how we treat guns. It's such a radically different view. And I wonder how those two places can exist so close to each other, and yes, culturally it can be so different. Anyway, a welcome for Bill Mann, everybody. Hi, Bill.
Hi.
So good to have you here. So, Bill, tell everybody you're living in America, but you're connected to Canada how?
Well, you can see Canada from the end of the street here over in British Columbia. But I lived in Canada for 7 years in Montreal, and I had a ball up there. I did a radio show in French. Just fell into it and fell in love with the city. And I think I was the only American I ever met up there who was not up there because of the draft. I went up because I wanted to go up, and I love the place. And only when I came back into this country after 7 years did I realize how disgusting our gun laws are. My son is a Canadian citizen. He lives up in Vancouver, and we go up there all the time. So we're in Canada quite often. And the first question they usually ask you at the border is, do you have any firearms? It's that deeply ingrained.
And when you're an American, you should be asking how many firearms I have.
That's true. That's true.
So tell me what the, as I say, with your son up there and with you a frequent visitor, having lived there, tell me how it happens that our culture evolves. What's your thought on this with such a death grip on guns, and that culture exists with a clear sense that guns are a bad part of society that need to be limited?
Well, there's something that I never learned in the U.S. I learned in Canada. The difference was in the U.S., we had cowboys and a lot of Indians who were shot and killed, and we had a civil war. Canada never had that. The Mounties would come in and take over, and there were very few battles with the Indians. Ergo, guns did not get carried around by the average citizen.
I see. So it really goes back to the pioneer lifestyle, you think, in America,
or the lack thereof. Yeah, in Canada.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then, as you see it evolving, I mean, we, as I say, have this notion about guns. It's woven into the cultural fabric here. It's horrifying, and we've taken it to real extreme levels. Like, it's not enough to have the pistol in the holster, like the pioneer life that you're talking about, or the rifle. Now we need assault weapons, weapons of war. They become sort of like the Humvees of the personal protective gear business. Meaning, I think there's a lot of image tied up in these things more than any kind of utility.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I did not see anything coverage 2 months ago when Canada banned handguns. Did you see anything in the media around you?
No.
I mean, that's a big story, but, nothing, just how cute Justin Trudeau is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Did you post this, Kim? I didn't see the Karen's post. Did you put it up there already?
I did. I liked it. I'll do it again.
Yeah. Okay. Do it again. When we both try to do it, it goes away. All right. Canadians say that living next to the USA is like living above crackheads. Canadians saying that living, next to the USA is like living next to the guy whose car horn is stuck and is always blasting. I mean, is there a sense that the Americans are just, what is the sense Canadians have of Americans? Maybe that's what I should just ask.
It's pretty much the people with the horns blasting. We play a little game when we go up to Canada, which is quite often. And can you spot the Americans in a restaurant? And yes, you can. They're always louder than anybody else. And Canadians are well aware of that. And they're nice people, so they don't really make an issue of it that much. Certainly when they come down and visit us. But, Canadians are much more cultured people and much more peaceful. When we came back, we didn't think much about guns in Canada because they were never really a present. But when we moved back to the United States, you immediately started thinking that this guy could blow me away with his gun. I mean, it's really an ugly feeling.
How is crime in general in Canada, Norm wants to know?
Canada does have crime, and very occasionally they have mass shootings. Very seldom. There was one at Dawson College in Montreal, and after that, Canada started cracking down on guns, and you can still have shotguns and what they call long guns up there, but you have to be part of the long gun registry. So
and this you'll always get, and of course this is true, but what I'm trying to make a broader point. But let me just read his point, Randy.
Yeah.
Guns aren't just woven into the society in the U.S. There is a constitutional right to own them. The Second Amendment needs to be changed or repealed. And he's right. But it's interpretation and the broad interpretation of that amendment that I think has led us down. So you can, there's a constitutional right to own them. No, there's a constitutional right that's specified in the Constitution such that it can be widely interpreted.
Well, just to show you how, speaking of the Constitution, Canadians have a constitutional hatred of guns. A few years ago, we were staying with our friend in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and the Prime Minister of Canada at the time, Jean Chrétien, was going through the airport in Charlottesville, Prince Edward Island, and somebody hit him with a pie. And I turned to my Canadian friend and we said, he could have been killed by some guy with a gun. And she absolutely refused to believe that anybody would have a gun, even around the Prime Minister. We just couldn't convince her. And she took offense at the fact that we thought Canadians might pull out a gun and shoot the Prime Minister. She really did. It's that strong.
Yeah, right. There's the sense that it could never happen. But the reality is, well, we prove it every day in this country. I mean, this Kentucky thing is somebody with a beef, right? Somebody with a grievance of some kind. And then there was a second shooting not far from Louisville yesterday. And one was dead, one is wounded. That's outside of Louisville College, this community college outside of downtown Louisville. So Kentucky, had more than their share.
Maybe they were members of a well-regulated militia.
Thank you. Canada bans new handgun sales in latest gun control action. That's from Reuters. That's how it looked. But you're right. It was really not widely reported by American media. Gee, I wonder why. Yeah.
I told you I'm from a military background and grew up on Army bases. My father was a career Army officer, and I lived at Army bases in New York, in Hawaii, in Colorado, and you do not see guns on Army bases. Now, where are they? They are locked in the armory. The military police have guns. That's the cops, and occasionally you'll see them taken out of the armory for parades. But growing up in the military, you had a healthy respect for guns, and you just didn't see them except on special occasions. And
the politics of I'm going to go back to Canada for a second. Yeah, I mean, that speaks to it, right, on military bases, of course. I mean, you think those are all people who can responsibly handle a weapon, and yet they don't keep the weapons out in circulation. They keep them in the armory. Well,
they're a well-regulated militia.
There you go. Before I let you go, tell me, the Canadian the politics of Canada is it's parliamentary politics, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And the Liberal Party of British Columbia just changed their name. They're not called the Liberals anymore because they were really conservative. So British Columbia is run by a socialist party. And that's another thing Americans don't know. The NDP, New Democratic Party, British Columbia is run by horrors, socialists. Can you imagine that? Socialists. So
that's what. Yes.
Socialists and no guns. How can that country possibly survive?
Well, we have socialism here, of course, in so many different ways, but people just don't like to tag it with the title. Hey, Bill, love visiting with you. Thank you for being a supporter. Bill's a regular listener, checks in, and
awesome. I am.
Yeah, it's
really cool. Love the show. Go ahead, Kim. I'm sorry.
I have a question. This is for Mark. Have you ever made a Bill Mann column? Like, did you ever get see your name in the column?
Oh, I used to look with great anticipation. Yes, absolutely.
That's when you know you've made it. If you showed up in the Mann column, you knew.
Bill did a big.
I reported something that Mark did once. It still cracks me up. He was doing the weather on Channel 4, and he lost his graphics. And Mark turns to the camera and ad-libs, "The union guys must be upstairs comparing dental plans."
Right.
And you told me the IBEW filed a grievance against you.
Yeah, it was not. It was said in jest, but they didn't appreciate it.
Right.
That's funny.
The first profile Bill did like a profile of me. He spent the afternoon with me because we did an evening newscast, and I was going to a live remote.
Sure.
And I used to, not quite as bad with this anymore, but this is years ago, drive very aggressively, but I mean extremely aggressively. And poor Bill is in the car, and I used to drive my own car to the live remote, and that was my big thing, neighborhood weather. I go out to different neighborhoods. Now you see weather guys do it. It wasn't really done much at the time. And poor Bill, I had to peel him off the ceiling when we got to our destination. And then in his column, he wrote, and I'm ruining this, Bill, but you said Mark Thompson's not a type A driver. He's a type AA driver, AAA driver, or whatever, something to that effect. It was because I'm so impatient and so aggressive in traffic.
Oh,
yeah, and that's what made you. And that's what made you great, along with the good pipes.
Yeah, it's true.
Mark has the best pipes.
Oh, thank you, pal. Well, it's so great to still be in touch with you, and you still do write. I mean, you still do your writing.
I do. And I hope you keep hammering away on the gun people. I am just so fed up with these people. I used to write for Huffington Post, and I would write anti-gun pieces, and these drooling idiots would follow me around for years. So we feel the same way about guns.
It's a tough
national sickness.
It's a tough notion to even conceive of, that we could endure this kind of carnage and do nothing about it.
Go to Canada. Go to Mark's listeners and viewers. Go to Canada this summer and see the difference.
Yeah, wild. All right, one more time. Bill Mann, everybody. Thanks, Bill.
Hi.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep, loved it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah.
That was fun.
The Mark Thompson
Good
Show.
times. Good times.
Who's Mark Thompson?
I stand corrected. I misspoke. My words upset so many people. My bad. I'm sorry.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
Joe Fish, Sal the Shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
What he's got going here is a situation. There's a reason that this place is fun.
Someone did this to spoil our Christmas.
I have never heard of something like that.
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
Nobody has ever put something like this together that I've ever seen. We've never seen anything like it before.
I have a busy week.
I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps, that God ever created.
God bless America. The end.
Girl, you just rude.
Do I hit it long? Is Trump strong? Huh?
Who
is having that conversation.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
The science is ridiculous.
It's fantastic.
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Isn't anybody been a weed?
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Seriously, what the
Yeah, I know I messed that up, Tony. What, Tony, give me a
Thanks,
break.
Tony.
I'm doing a lot of stuff over here, okay? I don't need that look, that face, where you go, oh, Mark screwed that up. He hit the wrong button.
I just jumped. I was ready to jump into action. Like,
oh my God. Of course I hit the wrong thing. I've got to hit this thing and that thing, and then got something else for the content. Throw a brother a break. My God.
Morning.
Yes. I wanted to mention to you a couple of things. First of all, thanks again to Bill Mann for dropping through and talking. But thanks to all of you for. This is interesting. I was going to say for adding to the mix. James says, "Hi, Mark. Tell Kim there is an alternative way to insert the letter I.
Oh.
I lowercase I use combination Alt number pad 105 and uppercase I." Oh, I think that's perfectly.
What?
What? You just don't get it.
I don't get it.
You don't.
I do not. I do not get it. Let me read
All
it
right.
again.
I
There's an
don't. I can't.
I lowercase I. First of all, you can use a combination of Alt plus the number pad.
Okay.
105 and uppercase L, I guess that would be. Use combination Alt plus number pad 73.
Alt.
Yeah.
Huh. You do not know what you are talking about.
Yeah, I'm gonna, James, thank you for that. I appreciate any help I can get, and I will practice your tricks. I'm going to copy and paste that into my email and look at it later and see if I can't mess around with it.
Yeah. Eric, I think, pretty much has it, which is, yes, I'm sure she wants to do that every time she needs to type an I.
So Trevor in the chat told me earlier that I should just, every time I have to type an I, use an exclamation point because it's like an upside down I.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So that's my new thing. I'm doing that.
Oh, I see. I love that everybody's getting in on this. Nick writes that the E with the accent is Alt plus 0233.
I don't have an Alt as my, I have a MacBook Air.
Yeah.
So I don't have an Alt.
Get Tony on the job, says Grady. Yeah, really.
Thanks, Tony. I need Tony. Yeah. I'm just going to send my whole computer to Tony and hope for the best.
I say just push one. Usually, just use the number 1 instead of I. Use to make it simple.
That's your solution, Tony?
Yeah. Then I buy a new keyboard.
Sometimes
because you have a MacBook Air, you can just get a little external keyboard for like.
Got to go for the simple solution sometimes.
I think Gail just fixed it.
There we go.
Gail Guthrie, here's $20 for a new keyboard. Exactly. Thank you, Gail. You're lovely to do that. You want something clickbaity, or you want something? I've got really
clickbaity.
Oh, great.
Clickbaity. Guns and I'm feeling all depressed. I need a clickbaity thing.
All right. Well, this would be good. How would you like to extend that depression forever? You could live forever. That's right. Experts claim, and I'll put my credibility glasses on for this, that humans could achieve immortality by 2030. One futurist even says we'll be able to attend our own funerals in a new body. An ex-Google engineer said that he thinks humans will achieve immortality by 2030. And I'm no expert on the calendar, but I think it's 2023. Am I right about that? So 2030, and I'm no expert on math, but that's soon. Reanimating your brain, Kim, and uploading your mind to the cloud could be the key to achieving a sort of immortality.
That's so self-centered and egotistical.
That's America, and those
Nothing
are
will go
human
wrong
beings.
with doing that.
Yes.
I mean, why
Nothing.
do I think that somehow my brain is necessary for the furtherance of humanity?
Oh, no. It's because we all, I'm telling you, are stars of our own movie. You know,
God.
We're all John Wick. We're all the stars. It sounds far-fetched, but scientists have been looking for years into ways that we can regenerate ourselves or upload our minds into a computer and, in a sense, achieve eternal life. Electronic immortality. The idea of uploading your mind to a computer has been theorized for many years, but it has mostly remained the stuff of science fiction. Nectome, a U.S.-based startup, is trying to change that by devising a way to preserve the human brain so that memories can be uploaded to the cloud. They have figured out a way to preserve the human brain in microscopic detail using, quote, high-tech embalming. And this is an MIT Technology Review article that discusses a chemical solution that can keep the body intact for hundreds or even thousands of years as a statue, essentially, of frozen glass.
Why?
Nectome is providing a service, Kim, please, when you ask why.
Lord.
What if we told you you could come back in hundreds of years? The key to recreating your personal consciousness involves accessing the connectome, which is a term clearly I think they've invented it. It's a complex web of neural connections in the brain. It's the brain's wiring system. This company, Nectome, which has been referred to as a preserve your brain and upload it company, has figured out a way to embalm the connectomes, that is, that web of connections in the brain, as well. In order to, this is kind of a hitch, in order to allow the technology to work, participants have to be willing to be euthanized. Would you be okay with that, Kim?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, bring it on. In the hopes that I'll be alive later?
It was a little like
die today for immortality tomorrow?
They left that out of the pitch initially.
Can you let him finish, sir?
Yeah, that's right. Will you let the guy finish? He wants you to euthanize yourself here. We'll actually help you with it. So they literally had an MIT contract, and they lost that contract because it was, now, there's one thing we have to tell you. You have to be willing to be euthanized.
Can you let him finish, sir?
Right. So I'll post this article if you want to read more about it. You can read about it on my Twitter feed, at Mark T Live is what I am on Twitter. But it's a sort of immortality. It would be nice if technology could be applied to saving this planet or to stop killing this planet as doggedly as technology is being applied to human immortality. But I guess that's just the human animal. The great David Cay Johnston, the Pulitzer Prize winner, will talk about judicial overreach. Might the FDA just be a thing of the past? Now we have judges who are going to make decisions on what drugs should be available to you based on 1870s law. Smash the like button like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Kim's News next, and then the great David Cay Johnston.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Let's start with some drugs, shall we? The Biden administration is cracking down on the flow of fentanyl into the United States. The plan includes issuing sanctions to financially cripple illegal drug syndicates in Mexico and ramping up efforts to target money laundering activity. The White House is also calling on Congress to permanently classify fentanyl-related substances as Schedule I drugs. Another Tennessee lawmaker recently expelled from the state's House of Representatives could be reappointed soon. That is Justin Pearson, and officials say a vote to reinstate him will take place on Wednesday. Pearson and recently reappointed Justin Jones were ousted last week for protesting gun violence on the House floor after a deadly shooting, a school shooting, I should say, in Nashville. And President Biden has signed a bill ending the national COVID emergency. Is this it? Is it truly and officially over? The GOP-led resolution was opposed by most Democrats in the House, but the White House has said it would not veto the measure if it made it to President Biden's desk. The White House wanting to wind down the national emergency on May 11th.
Well, the access to funds, the public's access to funds for those who need it, health-related issues, that is to say health-related to COVID, that's all going to go away.
The paying for the vaccines, all of that. That's right.
Yeah, the economic relief, essentially, for those who needed it. Yeah, it's all going away. Go ahead.
This is the homeless encampment in Oakland. It's on Wood Street. It has been the blight and danger with more than 100 fires at that encampment, some of them serious enough to close down overpasses leading to and from the Bay Bridge. Well, finally, after many legal maneuverings, crews began removing tons of debris yesterday on Wood Street. They towed away 12 vehicles. Officials believe they can provide shelter for about 70 people that were living at Wood Street. The eviction process will take about 2 weeks to give everyone time to clear out. After the site is secure, construction can begin on a project to provide 170 units of permanent affordable housing. This is a big deal and kind of tells a story about what's happening in the city of San Francisco. I don't know if you saw this one, Mark, but the Whole Foods in San Francisco is closed. One of them.
South of Market?
Yeah, it opened a year ago. The store shut its doors last night for good because of safety concerns over their employees in the mid-market neighborhood. So
that's the one that I've been to many times.
Yeah,
they're closing.
They're closing. Wow. They close it down. Yeah, that's it. That first of all, I mean, theft at that store. They don't even have they had the baskets and then they have the carts. They don't have the baskets anymore because people were stealing. So they're out of basket. They were done. So much theft, and their employees coming to and from work in danger. City Supervisor Matt Dorsey says he is sadly not surprised, adding the problems have all to do with retail theft and drugs. He thinks this location will be able to reopen at some point, but no word on when.
It was a good spot, and they've got a guy there. They've got like a security guy there, but he's basically just for show, I suppose. But it's too bad. It really is too bad. I mean, San Francisco is getting such a bad. I went down the crime stats for you yesterday. It's not, when it comes to violent crime, our stats are really good. But, when it comes to stealing stuff, it's pretty much just another day at the office. We really, you have to, everything that's not nailed down is being stolen.
Well, there was a brand new apartments that were built nearby, a whole, kind of village that sprung up. All the businesses and companies, although a lot of people aren't going to work anymore, were there as well. They thought this would be the perfect location for such a place. And I think it kind of tells the story in a broader way of what's happening in San Francisco, even more so than, the closing of a CVS drugstore or something else.
Right. Yeah, because it was really supposed to be, it's part of the renaissance that's occurred south of Market over the last couple of decades.
Yeah. So they're shutting down this whole store. And again, it's only been open for a year. The address is Trinity Place. Is where it is, but it's very visible. It seems like so many people use this store, but it's they're done. So that's going on in San Francisco. Lastly, a story for you about Betty White's former home. You would think someone would buy it, and that maybe was a fan of hers that would revere the property.
Yeah, she had two places, a place in Monterey, Carmel, and she had a place in L.A. and Brentwood.
Well, her former home in the L.A. area has been demolished.
Oh, no.
This is the home in Brentwood, which Betty White bought in 1968. It sold for more than $10.6 million in June.
And they demolished it? $10.6 million? And then they just
10.6 mil. Crews are now laying a new foundation on the property. TMZ says the new owners are building a massive mansion in the spot where White lived for decades. So,
wow, she lived there with Alan Ludden, the old host of Password. They bought that place in Brentwood. We have a Brentwood in the Bay Area. And we have a Brentwood in
Yeah.
Southern California. Hers is in Southern California.
They bought it in
Wow.
1968. And she, they kept it. She kept it and lived in it and loved it. But and it was a wonderful house, but apparently not good enough for somebody who paid $10.6 million to knock it down and start fresh.
Well, yeah.
So that's the way it is. The Mark Thompson Show, of course, is crowdfunded. We won't be knocking anything down and building a new one. Thank you for being part of the Mark Thompson Show community, participating in the chat, spending your time with us today. If you are so moved to financially support us, you can find the Patreon and PayPal links at themarkthompsonshow.com. And of course, the YouTube Super Chat is live. I'm Kim McAllister on the Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
How about it for Tuesdays and the Pulitzer Prize winner, best-selling author? I am so privileged to be able to include him as a regular on this show. David Cay Johnston, everyone. Co-founder of DCReport.org. Hi, David. I want to mention I saw a great piece on DC Report just yesterday, and yesterday, the day before. Sorry, I don't know. The days run together, but I wanted to ask you at least start in this place, David, because we're seeing judges in America take hold of life in America in more and more aggressive ways. And this is something that you talk about on DC Report and have spoken of before. I know you've stepped back a bit from DC Report, the daily operations, but it continues to sort of have your sensibilities. And I think that's a real good thing, because this is something that really it could be a watershed sort of change in the way life proceeds in America, and it's being driven by these justices at the federal level, many of whom were populated by the last administration, by the Trump administration.
Well, we have rules at the federal level, and so do most local jurisdictions, to prevent what's called judge shopping. At federal courthouses, there's a random number generator and says your case goes to this judge. The problem is that in Amarillo, Texas, there's only one federal judge. So you had a group that is vehemently opposed to any form of abortion, and I would expect in a future litigation any form of birth control. And they were invented after the Dobbs decision last summer that reversed Roe versus Wade in Amarillo. They were given standing. Standing means you have a reason to be part of a lawsuit and to bring a lawsuit. And I'm astonished that they were granted standing except for this judge, who is a very radical, reactionary Trump appointee in this case. His decision violates a fundamental tenet of the judiciary. Judges sometimes will write an opinion telling you they don't like a particular administration policy, and they will say something along the lines of, however, regardless of the court's view of the administration's policy, our authority does not extend to second guessing the administrative agency unless they have egregiously violated their own standards for reaching a decision. There's a particular case I've written about that's been going on for 20 years on oil pipelines and how they collect from customers federal income taxes, which they never have to give to the government. For the people who collect it, there's about 175 pipelines, and it's a few thousand people. It's not the owners of the pipelines. The controlling owners and the executives get the money. It's, by my count, over $2 billion a year, or $3 billion a year. Congress says I'm wrong. It's $2 billion a year. But be that as it may, it's a lot of money to a handful of people. And the judge in the case keeps saying exactly this, whatever I think of the decisions of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, it is not my position to second guess their judgment. And this judge, in his opinion, doesn't talk about fetuses. He talks about unborn people. And I think he's taking a signal here from the Supreme Court decision in Dobbs. My apologies, the barking dog.
I love it. Yeah.
My apologies. Yeah. because in Dobbs, you'll recall, the court cited as legal authorities for overturning Roe 2 actual 17th century witch hunters.
That's right.
So, this is,
you're right.
Here. There's a solution, by the way, to this problem. When you have a one judge court, the answer to that is to consolidate several of the courts for filing purposes. And if you live in Amarillo and have to go down to Dallas or Houston or some other populated center, maybe El Paso, well, tough luck, because we shouldn't set up a system here to forum shop to get a particular judge, particularly when that judge is known for his not following procedure.
Yeah, I mean, he's a jihadist, is what I mean. If you look back and see his when he hit the street out of college, I mean, this was the top agenda item for him. I mean, he's been active in rolling back women's reproductive rights and trying to get this done, and he was finally in a position to do it. And I think you make such a good point, David, and I'd forgotten, sort of in the smoke of this latest thing, that the Supreme Court decision quotes, this centuries-old sort of ruling, and then this Texas judge, he points to an 1870s ruling. So you're really. Is this where the law is now, David Cay Johnston? I mean,
this is a real fundamental problem that is a very new and modern problem. It's driven by the Federalist Society and Mitch McConnell. It is contrary to the tradition of American law. Now, American courts overall have tended to be, for 240 years, quite conservative. Judges tend to follow. They don't very often lead. Only during the era when the Supreme Court was addressing racial inequities and essentially beating up on dumb people, things like the Miranda decision, where you have to advise someone upon their arrest of their right to remain silent. At the time, back in the 60s, there were all sorts of declarations this would lead to gross lawlessness and law enforcement could never function again. And of course, that turned out to be utter nonsense. But we've seen a willingness to embrace criminal activity by law enforcement or the federal agencies. I mean, a good example of this would be waterboarding, which dates to at least the Spanish Inquisition. We executed Japanese officers after World War II for waterboarding. And yet the George W. Bush White House, in an opinion by Professor John Yoo, now at the UC Berkeley Law School, held that no, this was legal, never mind the actions of our own government and the Geneva Treaty and other international law. And we need to be very troubled about that. And let me add one little story to this. In the book Parting of the Waters, which is about Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement, near the opening of the book, it's almost the opening story, they tell of civil rights lawyers before Judge Frank Johnson in Alabama, the first serious non-racist judge in Alabama. And he calls them into his chambers for a discussion and says, and they make an argument. And not in the book is that the judge turns to my late father-in-law, who represented segregationist schools before the Supreme Court, and people like that. Very principled man, but held deeply racist views. And my father-in-law says, well, Judge Johnson, I have 400 years of unbroken history on my side in this case. And the judge says, yes, you do, sir, until right now. Now, that's a different kind of activist here, because what Johnson was doing was stopping the second-class treatment in the area that litigation dealt with. He wasn't taking away rights from white people. You don't have a right to be abusive and to deny people the ability to vote or to send their kids to school. He was expanding the franchise. What we're seeing now is a dedicated effort to take away voting rights, make it harder to vote, take away rights for women. And in the case out of Amarillo that we have a DC report, this is a drug approved 22 years ago, which has proven enormously safe and far safer than any other option for ending a pregnancy. So the underlying basis of the judge's action is anti-science, unfortunately, the Republican Party with its current leadership is anti-science.
Kim had a question about the judges in this country and their general, the breadth of their ability to rule on things. Kim, will you follow?
I had an earlier question. I was just wondering about something because Mark was talking about, and you were just mentioning, how this drug has been available for more than 20 years, how a federal agency tasked with approving it had done all the research to do so. And so what business does the judge have then to come in and countermand the agency? And I had wondered, what, if ever, the judicial system or judges have been limited in the scope of what they can and can't rule on? And I did get an answer. John Daly texted me that a League of Women Voters, a thing about the Constitution making it clear, with a few exceptions, that Congress may decide what types of cases the court may hear and the procedures for doing so. This says that with enough political will and a willing president, it's within Congress's authority to limit the U.S. Supreme Court's power by restricting what type of appeals it may accept. I don't know if we'll ever get to that point. It would be great if we could.
Well, Kim, I mean, remember, in all things in the law, it cuts both ways. Every sword can be a shield. Every shield can be a sword, which is in my first lecture to my law school students at Syracuse University every year. In this matter, the Congress certainly can limit the jurisdiction of a district judge to his jurisdiction. That is, this judge can say, you cannot sell or provide this particular medication within this district until this is litigated. When circuit courts of appeal decide these things, generally their decisions are limited to the circuit they're in. And when we get conflicting decisions, so the Fifth Circuit in Houston, which is so conservative that its longest serving judge has held that a man on trial for his life whose lawyer was drunk, snored through most of the trial, and never questioned a witness, had adequate representation of counsel and could be put to death. Whereas the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco and Los Angeles tends to have a little more humane view of the world. And when you get a conflict, then the Supreme Court tends to take these up. The Supreme Court will now take up this case. It may be a while, but they will take it up because we have, I think it's the Second Circuit, and it'll go to the Fifth Circuit from Amarillo. But absolutely, Congress can pass rules. And by the way, the Constitution doesn't say the Supreme Court has the right to rule what's unconstitutional. You can reasonably infer that from the Constitution. But it was in Marbury versus Madison in the early 1800s, dealing with a commission, a federal commission, that the outgoing administration of John Adams didn't deliver until after the new administration was in office, and it was held to be invalid, that the court upheld or invented, reasonably invented, but invented the right to hold things are unconstitutional. I don't know who else would do that, but we can certainly adopt rules about the Supreme Court. I think the most important one to adopt right now is for Congress to require that Supreme Court justices comply with judicial ethics rules that apply to every other judge in America. They apply to traffic court judges, because we shouldn't have Clarence Thomas getting millions of dollars, and apparently it is, in fact, over the decades, millions of dollars in free vacations from Harlan Crow, who certainly wouldn't be taking him on vacation if he was a traffic court judge. By the way, a job that I think that Justice Thomas is well suited for.
Yeah, you said before, I think, that you have no problem with him as long as he's a traffic court judge.
Yep.
So that's the answer. So the answer is, technically, Congress could restrict the cases that would make it to the high court. I mean, just in the case of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, of course, the Supreme Court would then rule on that also.
Yeah.
But if we do it by constitutional amendment, which is very hard to do intentionally, so it's difficult, but we've done it 27 times in 240 years. We could amend the Constitution to focus on these issues. And the underlying point is that judges are not supposed to rule in favor of their biases. And we have lots and lots of cases of, for example, mass-going Catholic judges who have issued rulings contrary to the teachings of the Catholic Church because they're not supposed to consider the teachings of the Catholic Church. And that's what we are getting, unfortunately, away from. We are getting ideological judges who say, this is the way I think, and I now have the power to make you do what I say. Absolutely not.
Yeah, this is true. Just before I get to Perry Joe Jim Bob's point, you're so right. You could make the argument, I think, cleanly, David Cay Johnston, that judge, rather than ruling in this case, should have recused himself from the case. I mean, given his background, given his activism in this area, I mean, as I say, I'm sorry. I mean, he's really a radical activist in this area of reproductive rights. You should recuse yourself.
He is, and for those folks who aren't watching, Perry Joe Jim Bob has written something that's very interesting. The drug, talking about the drug that induces abortion, a much better version than what the Old Testament recipe is for a drug to induce an abortion. The drug isn't the problem, it's the means to an end. Next will be attacks on same-sex marriages, interracial marriages, etc. I agree with you. I think that you're going to see an assault on contraception. Let's go back to the pre-1965 Supreme Court ruling that it is a crime to sell or make available contraceptive devices. And essentially that's a Catholic, ultra-conservative Jewish and a few other faiths view. It's not secular, but yeah, that's what these people are bringing. And I think that unless we elect different senators and representatives, there's more than that coming. You dive into the literature of people who are in the Federalist Society, people who are in the radical right. They are developing this legal theory that you can only have laws consistent with what the law was in 1787 when we adopted the Constitution. And I'm making a deliberately absurdist argument here, but I guess that'll be the end of air travel and air traffic control and rules on licensing pilots.
Yeah, the modern age is threatened. Eric says, if politics is a pendulum, there's going to be one hell of a swing to the left in response to all this crap eventually. Boy, that seems like a long way from where we are, but maybe, I don't know.
That's something I've been thinking about, because I'm so sorry, but it's the question I wanted to ask you is, Trump stacked the courts with all these justices. And I believe are they lifetime appointments, or how long? Because how long does it take? Are we going to be dealing with this for decades? The pendulum might swing, but it's going to take a long time to get rid of these people.
All Article III federal judges, so District Court, Court of Appeals, Supreme Court, those are lifetime appointments. So many judges don't stay. They leave and they go into private practice, or Merrick Garland left the D.C. Court of Appeals to become Attorney General. But it is a lifetime appointment. Back at the time we started this country, you were unlikely to serve 20 years. Clarence Thomas, the longest serving justice, has been on the court for, I think it's 33 years now, maybe at 34. We need to recognize that conditions change, and the Constitution is a blueprint. It is not the final design, which will continually change. I'm thinking of Stuart Brand's book, How Buildings Learn, in which he shows all sorts of buildings over long periods of time, and different owners had them, and how they alter the buildings to fit the needs of the time. There's a real fundamental problem here in judicial ethics. There's a fundamental problem with Mitch McConnell's approach to stacking the courts. Roughly 1 in 4 District Court, Circuit Court of Appeals justices, and 1/3 of the Supreme Court are Trump appointees. And those people were picked for ideological reasons, not because of their distinguished jurisprudence. None of the Trump appointees, and Justice Gorsuch is a sophisticated thinker. I don't like his thinking, but he's a very sophisticated thinker. But he can't hold a candle to Ketanji Jackson Brown, the black woman appointed to the court recently, who in her very first words from the bench went after one of the big lies in America. The Constitution is race neutral, her other justices said. And she said, no, it's not. It's full of race. It's all over the place. 3/5 of a person, amendments, et cetera, et cetera. And anyhow, we all need to be very worried about this. I've long been in favor of expanding the Supreme Court to either 15 members or 17 members. I don't want to go to 11. That's just sort of patently somewhere else. And appointing justices who are reasonable, rational people. They're not picked because they have some preset agenda wherever it is. And you need to be cautious about saying, well, we'll get a bunch of liberal judges, things will go our way. No, you want judges who are going to act the way judges are supposed to, interpreting the Constitution.
I mean, we've had this conversation a bit already because I'm way for expanding the court. And I'd always thought, I think you were the one who really enlightened me on this, as I recall, so this is kind of why I'm asking you again, that you don't need a congressional, a two-thirds congressional vote on that. You can expand the court. The bar for expanding the court is really low. Joe Biden could expand the Supreme Court. Couldn't he? Take us through that again. If you actually wanted to.
To increase, the number of justices in the Supreme Court is set by Congress.
Okay.
So you need 51 senators if you can get to a vote. Remember, we have the 60 vote rule that makes it undemocratic. But ignoring that, 51 votes, and in the House, a majority plus one, and you can change the number of people who are on the Supreme Court. You can't, with current justices, force them to retire. But I think that there's an enormous amount of power the Senate Judiciary Committee has to embarrass Justice Thomas, to embarrass Chief Justice Roberts, who's an institutionalist. The Senate has the power to investigate Thomas's finances, and we know that his wife has received hundreds of thousands of dollars from people who had issues before the court. And here's a loophole that should be looked at. A lot was made after ProPublica revealed these millions of dollars of vacation trips about the fact that Harlan Crow has never had a case before the court. Well, wait a second. Harlan Crow is a founder of the Club for Growth. It had a case before the court in 2001. He's still on the board there. The American Enterprise Institute, which is a pro-business think tank, quote unquote, research and marketing organization in Washington, it does not have cases. Harlan Crow's on the board there and has given them a lot of money. But you know what they do? They have their fellows file briefs in court cases. So it'll say, Peter Wallison, senior fellow, AEI, and he'll file a brief. That's just a ruse to what's going on here. And the question that should really be put to Justice Thomas under oath by the Senate Judiciary Committee is this. Do you think that that Mr. Crow would have spent millions of dollars wining and dining your wife and flying you in private jets if you were a traffic court judge, sir?
Sure.
And by the way, and the second question is, and how many times has the Justice Thomas, have you had Mr. Crow stay overnight at your home at your expense?
Well, you know something, David, the faux righteous indignation that Clarence Thomas cranked up for the confirmation hearing, and I'm sure he's capable of marshaling at a moment's notice. I think you'd see that on display. But even so, you're right. I mean, there is and I think you're seeing it in Tennessee. You saw the power of the people. You saw the power of nationally embarrassing a legislative body, and they walked it back right away. So,
well, they didn't walk it back. The local legislators in Nashville and Memphis put the guys back in office temporarily, and then they have to run for office again. When the first of the two Justins reappeared on the floor of the House yesterday and got up and spoke, the speaker slammed the gavel and in the most contemptuous way said, "Out of order." There's been reporting since then by Judd Legum and my friend Phil Williams, who's one of the best TV investigative reporters in the country, is looking into the Speaker of the House of Tennessee may not live in his district, which the Tennessee Constitution requires. U.S. Constitution doesn't. You could be the congressperson from San Francisco and live in Oakland under federal law. Now, California is a state law, if I recall, that prevents that. But my congressman in Western New York here in Rochester could live somewhere else in the state, but they had to live in the state. But the Tennessee Constitution is very clear. Members of the legislature have to live in their district, and the law says that you are presumed to live where your spouse and children live and children go to school. Well, that starts from his district. So maybe the person who should be expelled is the Speaker of the House in Tennessee.
That's wild. That really is wild. David, so appreciate you. You know him, the Pulitzer Prize winner. You should pick up a book or two. Crack. If you want to see how rich America has taken advantage of the rest of America, pick up one of David's books related to that. But if you want to learn about the true mobster quality that Trump has had all his life, pick up any one of David's books on Trump. I mean, it's amazing. It's alarming. In fact, you know what I'd love to do at some point? I'd love to tell one of those stories from one of the Trump books, because they're incredible stories, you know, and they're
let's
true.
do two of them in a future show. Let's do the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that Donald Trump plied with liquor, limousines, and hotel rooms so they would gamble because they had money. Now, remember, we're not talking about a 19-year-old who's dolled up. We're talking about a 6th grader.
Right.
And that's in The Making of Donald Trump and in Temples of Chance. And let's also talk about the chapter in The Making of Donald Trump showing mercy about the major international cocaine trafficker Donald was involved with up to his eyeballs for a decade, who he did extraordinary favors for that make no sense whatsoever unless, as I show in the book, they were in the cocaine trafficking business together. And then what he did makes absolutely perfect sense.
So incredible. Yeah, good stuff. All right, for the next time, David Cay Johnston. Thanks, David. Right on.
Hi.
Wow.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow. Love the conversation with David Cay Johnston. Got to Kim's question. I felt good about that. Thought it had it all, if I can say that. It really did. Smash the like button like a boss.
With your iron rod.
Damn straight. If you haven't yet, I recommend that you check out our website, themarkthompsonshow.com. There you can click through to Patreon or PayPal. And in a few moments, I may recognize a couple of new patrons. Really appreciate that. We have some added content, which I think will be dropping a little bit later in, I'm going to say probably next week. Some of that added content, those who are patrons and PayPal members, you'll have a chance to see that a little ahead of everybody. So we're trying to get that all organized as well, so that there'll be some advantages to, you know, joining our ranks, and we really appreciate that. And we're completely crowdfunded, which is why we're trying to come up with different ways that we can reward all of you who are part of the crowd that is funding us. I mean, beyond just the show. So we're working on that as well. But really, truly grateful. themarkthompsonshow.com. Kim's news, then I've got a big law and disorder segment waiting for you as well. Smash the like button.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
And now Kim's over-the-top medieval news theme.
I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show, and this report is sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. Yay!
Right on, Tenuta.
There they are. It's beautiful. I love it. We'll talk more about Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore in just a moment. But to the news now, where police are saying that the AR-style rifle that was used in yesterday's mass shooting at a bank in Kentucky was purchased legally. Officials in Louisville held a press conference this morning to give an update on this investigation. They say the gunman bought the weapon last week and told at least one person he was suicidal and contemplating harm before he killed 5 people and injured more than a half dozen more. Police say a shooting outside a funeral home in Northeast Washington, D.C. was a targeted attack. Here's what it looks like at the scene. The D.C. police chief says 4 people were shot. 1 person did not survive. The shooting broke out this afternoon outside the Stewart Funeral Home. The suspect in that case is still at large. Kind of concerning in Madera County, California. They've been without a hospital in Madera County since January. That means 160,000 residents, most of them farm workers, don't have access to emergency health care. The now abandoned Madera Community Hospital shuttered after negotiations with a large healthcare system to buy it fell through in late December. That forced the hospital into bankruptcy. Locals there have to drive to Fresno, more than 30 minutes away by car, to where officials say people are overwhelming the hospital system there. So the closure kind of highlights the squeeze that rural hospitals are feeling. 6 more rural hospitals in California are at risk of closing, that according to a study done in January by the Center for Healthcare Quality and Payment Reform. No hospital in Madera County. Speaking of medical issues, cases of sexually transmitted infections surged in 2021. You're welcome for not having a picture of that. The CDC data shows that the number of cases jumped by 7% in 1 year to more than 2.5 million cases. More than half of those reported cases were, what do you think, Mark?
I don't know. I don't have a guess.
No, it's chlamydia. More than half of the cases.
Chlamydia. Come on with it. I never would have gotten that.
Chlamydia for the win. That's right.
Wow.
That's not fake. That's real.
Yeah, that's real bad.
Gotta watch it, people. Gotta watch it. Elizabeth Holmes will have to wait out her conviction appeal in prison. No home with an ankle monitor bracelet for you, ma'am.
That's one of the better pictures of Elizabeth Holmes that I've seen, by the way.
It really is.
She's one of those people, we're all this way, where you can get a good pic or a bad one. But she's had a lot of pictures taken of herself, and this is one of the better ones.
Well, she's got her Steve Jobs black turtleneck on.
Exactly. Yeah, and she's got that fake low voice that she speaks with.
She's rocking the tech look.
Hey, look, give her a lot of credit. It was a great scam till you got nailed.
Busted. The judge said the disgraced Theranos founder is not a flight risk, but he doubted her conviction would be reversed even if she wins her appeal. Holmes was sentenced to more than 11 years in prison for defrauding investors of the falsified blood testing startup. So in prison she stays during the appeal.
Yeah.
SpaceX is planning to launch another rocket from northwestern Santa Barbara County, and this one could be visible from the Southern California night sky. The launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base is scheduled for 11:48 p.m. California time. The payload called Transporter 7 will be aboard a Falcon 9 rocket. It is the 7th mission of its kind, and it will include 50 small satellites. Orbital transfer vehicles carrying spacecraft that will be deployed at a later time are also part of this launch. So if you see something flying in the night sky, especially if you're in the Southland, that's what it is.
That's terrific.
Do we care about actresses getting engaged?
I do. I care about everyone pursuing the
love,
the romance that's in their heart.
This is actress Millie Bobby Brown.
Oh, yeah, from Stranger Things.
That's right. And she is now engaged to John Bon Jovi's son.
Wow, those cute kids.
The 19-year-old Stranger Things actress, 19, and she's engaged. Millie, I don't know. She's announcing her engagement to Jake Bon Jovi on Instagram. She captioned a black and white photo of the couple with the words, "I've loved you 3 summers now, honey. I want them all."
Isn't that great? If your daughter came in at 19 and wanted to get married, what would you be excited? But before you say no, married to John Bon Jovi's son.
19 is too young.
For John Bon Jovi's son, even.
For anybody, in my mind. So I would say that's great that you're engaged. Why don't we set the wedding for about 4 years from now and see how it goes?
Absolutely not, Mom. I want to do it this summer. In fact, we've already picked out the venue. And
you have to make your life mistakes then. I'll be here for the marriage,
so and I'll be here for the divorce.
I got your back, love. That's good.
So you would back off and let the kids do it, and you would be there at the wedding, and you would be like,
you express your concern and you let them make their own choices, right?
Wow, that's
because
really
you
great.
Can't say,
how would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Well, you can't ignore it. It's kind of a big deal.
You can't come down too hard because then they'll do it just to spite you, right?
Oh, that's a good point.
I do have an idea for Millie Bobby Brown, though.
What's that?
Well, it turns out that Tenuta Vineyards hosts events.
Oh. That's a great idea.
I'm thinking it is. They've got the roses on the table. They've got the whole 9 yards. They are ready to host events and to do all the good things. So let me tell you that.
That's a great idea. I
yes,
think
they have.
It's fantastic.
It is fantastic.
Tenuta Vineyards has space for off-site business meetings. Their event room holds up to 100 people. So she could have quite a few people packed in there. Their small event room holds up to 20 people. Both of the rooms can be reserved for private parties.
I like I see myself as more of a small event room guy, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I don't like the.
If we hold a Mark Thompson show event, it's going to be jammed. You got
maybe I don't. You might be surprised.
No, you have to book Cafe Tenuta for that. We got to have the big guns. Yeah, that's true. So they can do team building events. They do this thing where it's called Be a Winemaker for a Day. And it's a competition. So everybody goes home with a bottle of the winning blend.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
I certainly hope so.
Do some really, really fun things. And of course, Tenuta Vineyards is child friendly. They are pet friendly. They are cyclist friendly. They do all kinds of things. And I do want to let you know that you can get a discount. A Mark Thompson show discount.
Oh, wait a minute. You had me at discount. Tell me about it. Yeah.
So you have to call them, and I'll give you the number. Here's the phone number. It is 925-699-4576. You can see it on the screen right there. I'll put it back in a second. But if you call, you have to call to get the discount. You can't email or go to the website. You have to call. If you call Rich at Tenuta Vineyards and say, smash it with your iron rod, you get 10% off.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Thank you. At Tenuta Vineyard Winery in Livermore.
But you don't have to do the voice. You can just say smash it with your iron. No, you don't.
That's my rule. I'm putting that rule in.
Oh my God.
Yeah, all right. Well,
Rich wants the voice too. I know he does.
It's getting harder and harder to get that 10% discount. All right, go ahead.
10% discount. You book your private event and you are all good to go. See what I'm saying?
Well, it seems pretty cool to me.
I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is The Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Use Mark Thompson.
It is our Big Tuesday show. We had David Cay Johnston, a visit from Bill Mann. We talked a bit about judgeships and judicial overreach and packing the court and expanding the court and judicial agenda and all the rest. If there's a moment, I'll try to get to some law and disorder. If you have anything you want to say to me or anyone on the show, you can reach us at themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. I did want to tell you something pretty eerily cool, maybe, or eerily disturbing, or eerily...
You're freaking me out. What is it?
Well, I should be freaking you out in a way, because this is in your space. A Kuwait media outlet says that they have created a virtual news presenter. We call them anchors, using artificial intelligence. So this is AI come to the Lester Holt, David Muir, whoever's doing CBS part of the world. They've named her Fedha. She made her debut in the Kuwaiti News Twitter account. It's an affiliate account of the Kuwait Times, not really important. She appears as an image of a woman with light-colored hair wearing a black jacket and white T-shirt. She is completely AI generated.
That's really scary.
I know you want to see it. And so now, Tony, if you would please. This is, and we can hear her. You'll be able to hear her. She's speaking Arabic, but you'll be able to hear what she's saying.
أنا فضة. أول مذيعة في الكويت تعمل بالذكاء الاصطناعي في مؤسسة كويت نيوز الإعلامية. ما هي نوعية الأخبار التي تفضلونها؟ لنسمع آراءكم.
I mean, that's completely believable and completely fine. It is.
Okay, so first of all, they can make her say whatever they want to say.
Of course. They can make any anchor say whatever they want them to say. Just put it in the teleprompter.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's true. But a human being might look at something or look at something and know it's a lie or refuse to say it. Like
Please.
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying that no. I'm saying that these anchors, and I love my anchors, as you know. I was an anchor. I mean, Dan Ashley.
Big shout out.
He would be able to push back. I will give you that. But not a lot of anchors have the kind of juice that Dan Ashley has.
I think if a network tried to make Dan Ashley lie, that his reputation and
right. That's what I'm saying. He'd be able to push back. His
dignity is more important. He would be able to push back.
But a lot of anchors would not be. Raj Mathai would be able to. He has that kind of juice also. So Dan and Raj could push back. But what I'm saying is there are a bunch of people. Hey, if you don't believe me, look at what the Sinclair Broadcasting people all had to read. Hundreds of them.
Look at
they
Fox
read
News.
that horrible newscast. Right. Fox News as well at the highest levels.
The email, they knew they were lying, and they went on the air and did it anyway.
Thank you. So you're making my point for me. I mean, that's exactly it.
Good day, sir.
Exactly.
The possibility exists that an anchor would look at that and say, this is too much even for me, right? But now you've got this fake where they could make her say the most outrageous things, and if people don't realize it they're thinking this one. And also, why is she white?
Yeah. I mean,
we'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
I don't know.
I don't understand why they made her look like that.
No, I mean, there are people who look like that in Kuwait. What are you saying? That you think she should look a different way?
Well, are there people? I mean, I would think if it's a Middle East broadcast that, most of the anchors there would be people of color.
Many people would be, but they're also light-skinned Middle Eastern people too, I guess. I haven't spent a lot of time in Kuwait. I was in Dubai, and I saw people of different complexions, dark and light.
Okay.
But I take your point. If you wanted a stereotypical Kuwaiti anchor, you would probably make them darker complected. But I think this is sadly pretty good.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, Kim. I'm sorry. I'm just saying we are looking at a very real possibility. Here, let me give you the positive spin on it. Okay. Now, I'm for people doing stuff. So you're, certainly the news business. If you had, stay with me on this.
Okay.
A solid editorial staff, you had a respectable, good, top flight editor-in-chief. You had a respectable, good, top flight producer, and writer. And you wrote solid, good news copy, wouldn't you like to see it done by that anchor? I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it except for the fact that you're eliminating a human being's anchor job. Again, all the friends that I have are anchors, and they do a great job, and they ad-lib and do these other things. Some of that would be lost, I think. But the actual presenter who's just reading copy, reading it on the prompter the way they do on all the major network newscasts.
Right.
I mean, if that was done, if that copy was written by top drawer editors and producers, what's the difference? Just to play devil's advocate.
If I don't have any allegiance to the person who's, in this case, a fake person, right, who has no personality, who offers nothing extra,
not like the personality of David Muir. You've got such great attachment to the personality of David Muir.
No, I don't.
Please. Okay.
But this person brings nothing extra to the table.
Right. No network news anchor brings much personality to it. It's good evening tonight. Another shooting in America. Long nightmare. It's just all.
This may date me, but I did have an allegiance to Peter Jennings.
Well,
I'm just saying.
When was Peter Jennings on last?
Google it.
That is.
I'm just saying.
That's almost like a boyhood crush. That's like a boyhood crush. It was so long ago.
It's a news crush. I had a news crush on Peter Jennings.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that
you just woo.
You are just woo when you get cranked up.
The AI lady offers nothing extra, brings nothing extra to the table.
I'll tell you whether she brings. Hang on a second. Let me put my credibility glasses on. Tony, will you run her again, please? I'll tell you whether she brings anything extra.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Here she is. She's speaking Arabic, but she's very attractive. And listen to the way she speaks.
أول
she's
مذيعة
fake.
في الكويت تعمل بالذكاء الاصطناعي في مؤسسة كويت نيوز الإعلامية.
And you know
ما هي
something,
نوعية
Kim?
الأخبار
The
My point
David
is-
Muir is fake also. So is Lester Holt. I mean, that's not really them. That's their news person, them. Same thing with any news anchor, right? So when you say she's fake.
I mean, I'm not TV, but not me.
No, but this is a far more...
I serve up some news
this is
with
a
a little
far more
personality.
organic. This is a far more organic situation. Honestly, a KGO newscast or a KCBS newscast, even to use another example, generally speaking, is it's 11:54 KCBS news time and blah 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 blah, and it's all very traffic and weather together, traffic and weather blah blah blah. They have a formula.
Right.
That keeps it very, I mean, it could be done by AI. I'm not saying it should be.
We have processes and protocols and standards.
Personality. KGO wasn't. He could stop me in the middle of a newscast and like you do here and bust in and it would be fine. So that's a different thing.
Different animal. Yeah.
What I'm saying is, what does she bring to the table? Why would I want to watch her instead of going to their website and just reading the news that their staff has written?
Well, I'm kind of growing attached to her, so I'm sorry. Karen says she's blinking every 2 seconds, which I find annoying. You know something, Karen? I kind of like her blinking every 2 seconds. People are being very tough on my new girlfriend, who's the AI presenter. I'm really into her. Yes, Lensman. Mark will get you a room.
Down with Fedha.
I am very, very attached. I almost don't want Tony to remove her image from the screen. That's how much I like her. I can't wait till they come out with the English version.
No.
The English-speaking version.
She has to go. She's done.
Well, this is the future. You're looking at it, and you heard it here. That's your sample of the AI anchor out of Kuwait.
The Mark Thompson Show.
You can smash the like button like a boss. You're smashing it for the live humans that put this show together every day. Tomorrow on the show, I do want to mention the great Kevin Pollak, the actor from Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, born in the city, raised in San Jose. Kevin is entering the 5th season and the final season of Maisel. So looking forward to talking to him about that. That's really, really a great show. And I'll mention again, if you just can't get enough of us talking about movies, I drilled down on Full Metal Jacket with the guys at the Film Crickets.
That's cool.
They talk about whether or not it holds up as a movie all these years later. We talk about Stanley Kubrick. We mentioned 2001. We mentioned The Shining. We mentioned a few of these Kubrick films. He only did 13 movies, and they're all really long. We talked about that. And Full Metal Jacket is really 2 movies.
Yeah, I was about to say, Full Metal Jacket is the tale of 2 movies.
That's exactly right. But the same message, but in 2 movies. But Tony's exactly right. So you have the boot camp part of Full Metal Jacket, and you have the Vietnam part of Full Metal Jacket. It's really a good movie if you haven't seen it. And let me just think for a moment. Tony, you and I are going to bet, not bet money, but we're going to sort of wager imaginative on this.
All right.
I'm going to say the answer to this is no. And you have to now answer this question. Has Kim seen Full Metal Jacket? I'm going to say no. What do you think?
Yes.
It's an older
I'll go
movie.
opposite, so I'll say yes. But
okay.
Yeah.
Kim, have you seen the movie Full Metal Jacket, the Stanley Kubrick film?
I have not seen Full Metal Jacket.
Thank you. I know my Kim.
So many iconic like lines in that movie.
There was too much violence, so I had to click.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you went for a more contemporary film?
I think I started watching it and I just couldn't do it.
It's not violent off the top. The first part of the movie is not violent at all. It's disturbing, but it's not violent.
I didn't watch it.
Yeah. Anyway,
too much for me.
But the Film Crickets, there you go. Thank you guys. I had so much fun, and I hope some people find their way to your show because it was a lot of fun to do.
Speaking all right, that's movies and AI. Karen says, Mark, they already have AI that can replace actors. Harrison Ford's next Indiana Jones movie will have some AI of Indiana in it.
Wow.
It's a de-aging is what they did. They de-aged him a lot, is what they did, so they could do him in past scenes and stuff like that.
What does that mean, de-aged?
De-aged, so he looks younger. He looks like Temple of Doom Indiana Jones, and not
pretty
current
wild.
Harrison Ford.
And much better. The worst de-aging was in that Scorsese film, right, with De Niro and remember that where they
and also the Star Wars Rogue One. They didn't get that one really good. The AI, but they're getting better and better at it. Just exponentially getting. And now they can recreate voice like with Val Kilmer. They can they did that AI voice thing so they have enough sampling. Yes. They could just write whatever they want and it sounds like them. Whew.
That was scary.
And Disney's already bought for with Mark Hamill. I think they did with Harrison Ford too. They basically bought their rights to use their likeness and their voice in future things after they've passed. That's all what actors can do now. They can sell their image in future.
That is eerie.
What?
Yeah, that is really cutting edge, man. How do we know you're real? He says. Well, because I screw up too much to be. But
maybe
I don't mind the AI in Rogue One because I love the story so much. You are willing to overlook certain things once, if you like the. Before you know it, AI will replace podcasters.
No.
Somebody asked if the AI will be replacing Courtney, taking over Courtney's Monday murder mystery. You know what? I'm all for that.
You do have a crush on Feta. Feta.
I'm all for it. Yeah. Well, we have a big show tomorrow. Do we recognize? We have to recognize.
Do supers real fast. Or supers real fast, and then we'll do the music out.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Bring it on up. Let me see what we have. I love my. Joanne Blickensderfer is a regular supporter for Kim's new keyboard with an I that works. Nice. Big Dan Ashley shout out.
Big shout out.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you
Lulu
very much.
Lancaster, $5 to that new keyboard fund.
Lovely.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Lulu. Big shout out. Yeah. Gail Guthrie with a big. I'm not gonna cry, but $19.99 for a new keyboard.
I'm getting a nice keyboard, Gail.
You are. Sandra Thomas, $10 for Kim's eye. Oh,
big shout out.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. William Guy for $3. Thank you, William.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike Garcia in Oklahoma, Mike.
Thank you so much.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show.
Jennifer.
Bye-bye.
Here's $5 to knock down KGO to rebuild a new one. I actually have an interesting story about that. West Theory. Oh, wait a minute. We have more. Breaking news. Cruel radio host restricts his news person from fixing her eye.
Good headline, Wes.
That sounds like me. Yeah. I hope that we will all be smoother tomorrow. It was pretty smooth. It wasn't bad.
It is good today.
Aloha. Have a beautiful Tuesday.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show.
Never get enough shadow.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Over to Nikki's show next on the Nikki Maduro channel. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.